All right, let's talk about something that pretty much all of us have felt, but we don't really talk about it enough. That fear of letting other people down. You know that feeling, right? That knot in your stomach when you have to make a choice and you know it's not what someone else wants for you. Today, we're going to unpack where that feeling comes from and, more importantly, what we can actually do about it. I mean, seriously, think about it for a second. Have you ever found yourself saying yes when every single part of you was screaming no? Maybe it was your boss asking you to stay late again, or a family member kind of pressuring you into a decision that just didn't feel right. We have all been there, and that exact moment is what we're going to explore. And this fear, well, it tends to pop up in two main arenas in our lives, doesn't it? On one side, you've got your family with all of its deep personal history and expectations. And then, on the other side, you've got work, which comes with a whole different set of pressures. The feeling is kind of the same, but boy, the stakes can feel worlds apart. So what's really going on under the surface here? Well, it all boils down to something called the people-pleasing trap. And honestly, figuring out why we fall into this trap in the first place, that's the first real step to climbing back out. So what is people-pleasing? In a nutshell, it's that deep-seated need to make sure everyone around you is happy. But here is the most important part. It's almost always at your own expense. It's when your own needs, your own wants, and your own well-being get shoved into the back seat so someone else can drive. And if you look at where this all comes from, you can see it's all tangled together. It often kicks off with low self-confidence, right? Which then makes you crave validation from other people. You need someone else to tell you you're doing okay. From there, it's a short jump to tying your entire sense of self-worth to what they think. And that's when the fear of conflict, of someone disapproving of you, becomes huge. It makes sense, though. Deep down, we're wired to want to belong. So disapproval can feel like a real threat, which makes this a really tough cycle to break. Okay, so let's zoom in on that first big stage, family. For a lot of us, this is ground zero. It's where these habits, these patterns of behavior really start to form. It's a heavy question, isn't it? Why do we care so much about not disappointing our family? Their approval just seems to carry so much more weight than anyone else's. So what is it about those family bonds that cranks up the pressure to 100? Well, that heavy feeling comes from a few different places. A big one is feeling like you're responsible for all the hopes, the time, the money they poured into you, and that can create this powerful urge to avoid conflict at all costs. It's just easier to go along with things. And you know what? Even when we're fully grown adults, so many of us are still chasing that approval from our parents, sometimes so hard that we end up sacrificing our own dreams just to meet their expectations. And here's where it gets really dangerous. Because, yeah, making your family happy feels like the right thing to do in the moment. But the long-term price? It can be absolutely massive. This quote just nails it. You could end up looking back with a ton of regret for the things you didn't do, and even resentment for the choices you felt forced to make. And it's not just about some distant future. The damage happens right now, too. When you're constantly just swallowing your real feelings to keep the peace, all that pressure just builds and builds inside you. The result? Total emotional exhaustion, a lot of anxiety, and just this constant nagging worry. Okay, let's switch gears and talk about the other big arena, the workplace. The dynamics are different, for sure, but that same fear of letting people down, it's just as real, and it can have some pretty serious consequences for your career and your health. I mean, at work, saying no can feel like you're putting your career on the line, right? You worry you'll look lazy or unhelpful, or that you're not a team player. You're afraid of what your boss will think, what your coworkers will think. So you just keep saying yes. And this right here, this is the classic path to burnout. It's a predictable spiral. First, you agree to stay late because you want to be seen as reliable. Then that starts happening more often, and your personal time starts to shrink. Soon, you start to feel unappreciated because your extra effort isn't special anymore. It's just expected. And that frustration quietly builds and builds until, bam, you hit a wall. You're mentally fried, emotionally drained. And that is burnout. All right, so we've laid out the problem pretty clearly, both at home and at work. So the big question is, how do we fix this? The good news is you absolutely can break this cycle. It all starts with reclaiming your right to say no. Now, this requires a huge mental shift. I think we're basically taught our whole lives that putting yourself first is selfish. But this quote reframes that idea perfectly. Choosing your own path isn't about being selfish. It's an act of self-worth. It's you saying, hey, my well-being actually matters. And I mean, Just look at this comparison. It lays out the two choices so clearly. On one side, you've got people-pleasing, which leads straight to resentment, burnout, and regret. But on the other side, setting boundaries. That path leads to self-respect. It protects your well-being, it lets you gain independence, and it ultimately makes your mental health stronger. When you see it laid out side by side like this, the choice becomes kind of obvious, doesn't it? So, how do you actually start doing this? The key is to start small. You don't need some big, dramatic confrontation. Just practice saying no to something minor. And when you do it, be honest and assertive about your limits, not aggressive. A really crucial step here is learning to let go of the guilt. It is okay if someone is disappointed. You are not responsible for managing their emotions. And remember, you're doing this to protect your own well-being. And that brings us to our final thought here. Let's put this into a real-life scenario. Your family has their heart set on you pursuing a safe traditional career, but your passion lies somewhere else entirely, in a field that actually makes you happy. This is the ultimate test, their expectations versus your path. What do you choose? There's no easy answer, of course, but understanding the value of your own no, that's the first and most important step. Definitely something to think about.